Good evening, everyone. I got on a couple minutes early. We'll wait for a couple minutes and then start our reading. What a soggy Monday it was today. Even though it was a soggy day today, I hope everybody got outside at least for a little bit. Got to write a note for later our current current events section. Got a lot of current events tonight. At least a lot to talk about tonight. We'll wait one more minute. I always like to get on a little early and get prepared. So, excuse me. So we're a little more than halfway through April morning. Again, a historical fiction from one of my favorite authors, Howard Fast. I've read a few of his books. The other book that I read of his, The Crossing, is an awesome historical fiction depicting Washington and his men crossing the Delaware on Christmas Eve. And it was made into a pretty good movie. I don't remember. It might have been, maybe it was the History Channel. I don't remember what television network it was, but one television network made that book into a movie. And it was a great adaptation. So we've talked about a lot of really interesting things so far. Howard Fast has done an outstanding job of working in a lot of those important things that we need to understand about America and the colonial period. Howard Fast brings in mercantilism, right? He brings in the Boston Massacre. He brings in gun ownership, right? We talked about that last night. We read about that last night. A lot of these men in this area were required in a way to own guns, but it seems like some of them really thought it more of a burden than than a necessity. Well, maybe it was a necessity, but it was a burden to them to have it. And last night, Adam's father, before the first shots are fired, right? He's walking up and down the line, and he's making sure that none of the militiamen have their weapons at full cock and ready to go, that they're ready to fire. He doesn't want there to be any accidents. And we saw last night that, at least as Howard Fast depicts it, a shot comes from the British lines, or at least we think. Adam's father, Moses, is killed, and the American Revolution has begun. Adam runs away from the green, seeing his father, seeing Thomas Parker both dead. He hides in a ditch, and some redcoats chase after him. And then he goes and he hides in a smokehouse. So that's where we're going to pick up. God have mercy on me, I said to myself. I am losing my mind, and soon I'll be no better than the half-wit Jephthah in Concord, who is 60 years old with the brains of a 5-year-old, and now I myself am hearing voices. I was hearing voices. I heard a thin, cracked voice wailing, Adam, Adam Cooper, are you around? Are you alive? I opened the door of the smokehouse, and there across the yard was my brother Levi. Levi, I whispered. He jumped like a startled rabbit and looked all around him. Levi, here in the smokehouse. Then he saw me in the open door and he ran to me. He threw himself sobbing into my arms, hanging on to me as if I was the only thing left in the whole world. He was crying now, fit to break his heart, and that dried up the tears in me. I have noticed that when you have two brothers in a difficult situation and one begins to cry, the other usually contains himself. That was the way it happened to me. I pulled him into the smokehouse, closed the door behind us, and said, What are you doing here? I'm looking for you. Well, who sent you to look for me? Granny did, Adam. Father's dead. How do you know? I saw him dead, he sobbed. He had 2 bullet holes in his chest. They shot him dead, Adam. Those lousy, rotten redcoats shot him dead. That's my father. They shot him dead, Adam. He was shivering and shaking. I shook him until he had calmed down and was crying, and was crying evenly again. Then I put my arm around him and squeezed him, the way father had done to me, to show him that I wasn't angry. Where did you see father? I asked him. Out on the common. Granny and mother ran out there, and I went with them. First, the redcoats tried to stop us, but Granny was so wild and terribly angry that they let her go, and she fell down on her knees where father was lying and began begging him that he shouldn't be dead, because out of 5 sons, he was the last one. But mother just grabbed onto me and held and looked at father, and just wailing and wailing and just wailing, quiet like a girl. Oh, it was terrible, terrible, Adam. It was just more terrible than anything. Just more terrible, Adam, I tell you. Then a redcoat soldier came over, and he said something to mother about could he help. I don't know how exactly what he said, but because I didn't understand them so good the way they speak. And Granny stood up and spit in his face and said things to him like I had never heard her say before. Goody Simmons was there and her sister. The 4 of them, they picked up father and they carried him into the house. And there were dead people all over the common, with the women crying and wailing, and the redcoat soldiers all over everywhere. Who else was dead? I whispered. I don't know all of them. I didn't look. Some of them were across the common, and there were 2 men lying in the drainage ditch. I think one of them was Jonas Parker. Caleb Harrington is dead. Then I saw Jonathan Harrington crawling along through his own blood. The blood was running out all over him, and there were some women trying to help him, and he was crying. Isaac Muzzy was lying next to father. He was dead. He was all cut with bayonets. They had smashed his head in. He began to shake again, and I held him for a while and quieted him. They killed father, he said. Father's dead, Adam. Did you know that? I know that, Levi, I said softly, but he didn't feel any hurt or pain out of it. I saw how they shot him. It never hurt him at all. It hurts to be dead. No, it doesn't. Well, how do you know? I know. I know, I said. Stop shaking. Everything is going to be all right. It'll never be right again. Father's dead. Well, people die. People die. Don't you think father knew that he could die when he went out there to stand up to the British? Then why did he go? He had to go, I told him. He had to go. Why didn't you kill the British? He had asked it finally, and then someone else, and then someone else. And they would never stop asking why no one, not one of us, fired his gun, not one shot, not one show of force or courage or anything like that, but only the running away. He must have left it in me in the darkness, and he said, he must have felt it in me in the darkness, and he said, "I didn't mean that, Adam." It wouldn't make Father alive, I muttered. "Father's dead. We have to think of what to do." "He had 2 holes in his chest," Levi said. "What did Granny say to you?" "They said lay him down on the dining room table." Goody Simmons began to wash him. Dirty and was bloody. But Mother just stood there and said, "Moses Cooper, Moses Cooper. Don't keep on talking about it and thinking about it. He's dead." "What did Granny tell you to say to me? Can I come home?" "You can't come home. There are redcoats all over the place. She says go hide in the woods back of Cousin Simmons' house until darkness falls. Then we can hide you in the house." Yes, I thought. I'll hide in the house and hide in the woodshed. And even if I come out into sunshine one day, I'll still be hiding. "Will you do that, Adam?" "Tell them not to worry about me. I'll be all right." You won't run away now, Adam, would you?" he begged me. "You won't run away and leave me all alone?" "Of course not." We sat quietly in the darkness for a few minutes. Levi pressed close to me, pushing his face as I filled with guilt for all the times we had quarreled and all the names we had called each other. And I told myself that from now on, I would take care of him. Excuse me, just as if I were his own father. "You better go home now," I said to him. "I guess it's bad enough at home with all the misery they got, without worrying about what happened to you and me. What shall I tell them?" "I'll come later when it's safe. I'll be all right. I'll take care of myself." But when Levi slipped out of the smokehouse, I was alone again, and I was afraid again. And no one to come between myself and my fear and my grief. The forenoon. I must have dozed off for just a moment or two, and I was awakened by the sound of voices. I crept to the door of the smokehouse and put my eye against the thin crack in the closing, and there, no more than 3 or 4 paces, were 2 redcoats, standing there in the morning sunshine and looking, or so it appeared to be, directly at me. "Now take that shed, Sergeant," said one of them. "It could be stuffed as full with Yankees as a goose with pudding, and us none the wiser." "You have a point there, Blythe, indeed. Or that woodpile there, a possibility, no doubt. They are tricky devils, they are. Not to be trusted. I'd sooner trust my wife. There you have the nature of them, Blythe. Sly as women. You and me could be standing there having a word with each other, just 2 honest men attempting to do their duty accordingly in a solemn oath they have sworn to the king, and they'd like not as to be planning to pot us from that window. The devil! I don't say it's so. I say it could be so." "Then just inform me, Sergeant, why we don't take a torch to the whole dirty pile and burn it all to the ground." "That's not for you and I to decide, Blythe. It's just the nature of policy." A 3rd redcoat joined them and said, "The captain says to stand on parade on the common, Sergeant. We are marching." "Marching?" "That's what the captain said, marching. And without a wink of sleep. I say it's a shame, and I don't care who hears that. There is enough feather bolsters in this town to bed the whole regiment." So we talked about how this book applies to what we've been talking about in class, or we're talking about in class, about the American Revolution. One of the things we talked about was the Quartering Act, right? People in the Massachusetts Bay Colony were forced to give a bed and quarters to and food to any redcoat, and they're saying, "Why don't we just do it? We could just not start knocking on doors, get some food, and we can sleep for a while." "I'm merely communicating orders, Sergeant." I probably should be doing this like in a British accent. I'll have to work on that for tomorrow night. "I am merely communicating orders, Sergeant." The 3 of them walked out of my area of view, and then I heard the sound of bugles and the rattle of drums. Whether all the redcoats were marching, or whether it was only their regiment, with another regiment left to guard and search the town, I had no idea. But when I opened the door a few inches, it was clear as far as I could see, and I felt that this was my chance to get out of the trap of the smokehouse. You might think that with my father dead, my own fear would have lessened, but it didn't work that way. And all I knew was that I was alone. And who would take care of me or see me now unless it was myself? When they spoke of burning that place, I saw myself trapped in the shed, roasting to death. I only wanted to get out of there and go where I might never see a redcoat again. So, with the coast clear, I leapt out. Still hanging onto my gun, I raced across the backyard and the garden of the house, down a little slope, and plunged into the fringe of the woods, never glancing behind me or even to the side, but only eager to find the cover of the brush. It was still too early in the season for bushes and underbrush to be with leaf and provide cover, and the skin of woods was only about 30 paces across. But just beyond it there was a stone wall, and behind the stone wall I would have shelter, with the open meadow as a place to retreat. But no sooner had I plunged through the woods than I almost ran into two redcoats who were making their way along the stone wall. When they saw me, one of them let out a cry for me to halt, and the other threw up his musket and fired. I wasn't more than 20 feet from him, so he might as well have hit me, excuse me, if his piece had fired. But it flashed in the pan without taking in the chamber, and I sailed over that wall as if I had wings. Once in the open meadow, I had no fear that they would catch me. I had two long legs, and many was the foot race I had won. But the redcoats were burdened with their heavy uniforms, their enormous muskets, and the big packs they wore on their backs. I stretched my legs and fled across the meadow as if the devil himself were after me. And I felt that way too, holding my speed for a quarter of a mile that separated me from the stone wall that bound the opposite side of the meadow. There, panting exhausted, I fell across the wall into the arms, into two arms that embraced me like a steel vise. I clawed and twisted and struggled and tried in every way I knew to break that hold until I was brought back to sanity by a voice in my ear telling me, "Easy, easy, easy, lad. I have no desire to harm you. I only don't want you exploding that bird gun in my face out of excitement. Excitement is a bad state for the body. Many a good man would be alive today if he weren't dead from excitement. Now just take a good look at me. My name is Solomon Chandler, out of Lincoln Town. I come across the meadows to see you running like a deer in flight. Them two redcoats you fled from, they are standing back there, and none too quick to come across the meadows a hunting us. Just look and see and be calm." I relaxed, and he let go of me. And sure enough, back on the other side of the field, the redcoats were standing and watching, but making no move to come after me. Excuse me. "And if they should take a notion to come," said Solomon Chandler, "do we want to turn our backs to them, or maybe to keep a cool head on our shoulders? Since we are 2 to 2, even odds, my lad, and a gun is a commoner, an equalizer, believe me." I stared at him now. He was a tall man, a full head taller than I was, long in the arms, and his legs were skinny as a starved crow. But it didn't weaken him, being skinny. I had felt his grip and knew that. He had a long face and a long hooked nose, a jutting chin, two pale blue eyes, deep sunken in their sockets. When he smiled, he shoved a mouthful of a mouthful of broken yellow teeth, with wide gaps between them. He wore a provision bag over his shoulder, a powder horn, a bag of shot, and a water bottle over the other. He carried a rifle as tall as he was. His hair was snow white, and altogether he was the most freckled man I'd ever seen, and he was possibly the ugliest. "You don't know them," I gasped, still trying to get back my breath. "You don't know them. You don't know what they did over there. We were standing on the common, and they fired on us. They shot us down like dogs. They killed my father." "Ah, no. Jehovah damn them. Did they do that? Did they kill your father? Your own blood?" I nodded, and all my control went, and I burst into tears and put my face in my hands and cried like a little boy, full of shame and sick all through, but unable to halt my crying. "Now, that's the right thing," said Solomon Chandler. "Let the tears run freely. Grief should not be denied. Cry until you are free of it, boy. The Almighty knows that you have reason for it. Don't be ashamed for me. I have 6 children and 19 grandchildren. Each one of them is as dear to me as you were to your own father. May he rest in peace. I was able to stop then, and I was grateful to him. For as strange as his words were, they calmed and soothed me. As if for the first time I actually realized that life would continue and that my father's death and what had happened in our village did not mean the end of everything. Glancing across the wall, I saw that the 2 British soldiers were gone. Solomon Chandler was asking my name. Adam Cooper. Adam Cooper. All right, Adam, my boy. Suppose we walk a spell and put a mile between them redcoats and us. Then we'll just sit for a bit, and you will tell me what happened back there. He reached into his waistcoat pocket and took out a silver watch. 12 minutes after 9, he said. You've lost your youth and come to manhood in just a few hours, Adam Cooper. Well, that's painful. That is indeed. I wish it was true that I have come to manhood. I wish it was true that I have come to manhood, I said bitterly. Give it time, Adam. Give it time. Then he set off with long, brisk strides. I had to half run to keep up with him. He set off westward, and for about a mile, he walked parallel to the Concord Road. Then we turned south into the woods, climbed a hillock, and came to a tiny grassy glade, screened from every side by brush and wood. I had thought I knew all the countryside hereabouts, but Solomon Chandler knew them better than I did. Every field and fence. Once we were in the glade, he asked me whether I was hungry. When I nodded, he opened his provision bag and took out a cold roast chicken, a piece of ham, bread, boiled fruit pudding. He spread a cloth on the ground, laid out the food, cutting it up so that I should have no hesitancy about helping myself, and then he pressed me to eat. Well, let me take a quick sip here. So Adam has found himself a friend, and Adam is starting to believe that he's no longer a boy, he's becoming a man. I felt that it was wrong of me to be so hungry. I felt that it was sinful, in the face of all that I had seen and all that had happened. But after I had tasted the first bite of food, I ate as ravishiously as a starving man. I suppose it was my hunger and the circumstances that made it so. Yet the food tasted better than anything I had ever eaten. Between the 2 of us, we finished the ham and the chicken and the fruit pudding, washing it down with water from our bottles. Only some of the bread remained. And this Solomon Chandler wrapped carefully and stowed back in his provision bag. Then he stretched his legs and arms and said to me, Now, Adam, confess, you do feel a trifle better. I nodded. Life is potent, Adam. If it wasn't, you and I wouldn't be sitting here. You witnessed a mighty terrible thing, but men are clever when it comes to doing sinful and beastly things to other men. And what you witnessed was not the first time, and it won't be the last either. But life has a special quality of asserting itself, and that's a very important thing to learn about. It is. My father's dead. Talking like this won't bring him back. That it won't, Adam. Be sure of that. Nothing is going to bring him back. You know, laddie, when I was a young man like yourself first watches the death of someone close and dear to him, it's a bitter shock, it is. But if it was you lying out there on the common and your father out here, then there would be no consolation whatsoever. None at all that I could offer. The natural way is to let the old go, let the young live and taste life. Your father went too soon. But oh, my heavens, laddie, life is only a day, a long, long day. That's all. I am 61 years old, and it's like yesterday that I was a boy your own age, and a year older when I shipped out of Boston town to see the whole world, then back to be married and raise my own, then off to the French War. And all of it comes down to a moment. The good Lord, the Lord God Jehovah, he is eternal and timeless. He that was and is always will be. But you and me, laddie, we have a little bit to do, and we do it the best we know how. And that's just about as much as you can say for us or for your good father. May his soul rest. Now, I have said enough. I could sit here and talk you deaf, dumb, and blind, I could. But I want you to talk to me. I want you to tell me what went on back there and just how it happened, all of it. How it began, then everything that transpired. He was not to be resisted, this old man, Solomon Chandler. He never raised his voice, and everything he said had a trace of apology in it. Yet I found myself telling him every detail of the previous night, how the rider came to warn us, how we assembled on the common, how the British came. I left none of it out, nor did I attempt to polish it up and make us out to be heroes of any kind. I told him that so far I could see, no one shot was fired from our side. I told him what kind of cowards we were, and how we ran as if the devil himself was behind each one of us. When I had finished, he remained silent for a while, and I could see that he was thinking over all that I had said. Meanwhile, he had taken an old black pipe out of his pocket and a plug of tobacco just as black. Thoughtfully, he shaved tobacco off the plug and stuffed the pipe. I was wondering whether he'd kindle a fire to light the pipe, but after he had taken a draw or two on it, he put it back in his pocket unlit and unsmoked. Cowards you were, Adam? He asked at last. Yes, cowards. Oh? I think you got something to learn, laddie, about the nature of cowardice and bravery. It takes no courage to fire a gun and kill, merely a state of mind that makes killing possible. Such a state of mind does not come easily to decent folk, but we will see. He rose to his feet and picked up his long rifle. Come along now, Adam, if you're minded to throw in your lot with me. I can't go home now. Then come along, boy. Where? In good time, all in good time. You know where Millbrook forks? I know the place, yes. Well, son, there's a little pasture south of it, where I imagine we'll find a few sturdy Middlesex lads. It's a long way ahead of us, and what's started ain't easily finished. We set off again. Solomon Chandler walking more slowly now. We cut across the fields, over stone walls, and through bits of woods, but still more or less paralleling the Concord Road. North of us, we heard the sound of drums and the shrilling of pipes, faint at first, but then clearer, and the sudden panic in me was eased by Chandler's hand on my shoulder. Easy, easy, boy, he said. Their music never hurt a living soul, and you just make your mind to stroll along just as casual as if you were out walking with your lassie. If you have one now. Do you? I nodded. Tell me your name. Ruth Simmons, I whispered. Then that would be Joseph Simmons' daughter. The blacksmith there. Am I right? Yes, sir. Bless my heart. Now, do you know, Adam, the last time I set eyes on her, she came no higher than my kneecap. And what kind of lovers are you? Are you betrothed? I'm too young to be betrothed. Oh, bite your tongue with such words. How old are you, boy? 15, I answered. 15? Now, in my days, that was never too young for a betrothal, or for marriage either. But we're a careful lot these days, and they say a lad should have this and that before he takes a lady. Myself, I was married at 17 and never regretted it. Good heavens, no. And you're a big, upstanding lad. To look at you, I would have said that you were 17 at least. John Harrington was 17. They killed him on the common. Take your mind off those things now, Adam, he said. Don't worry about the dead. Let them lie in peace. We had topped a little hill, and there, half a mile to the north of us, plainly visible, was a high road. His arm over my shoulder, Solomon Chandler paused there. He pointed towards a long column of redcoats, stretching up and down the whole length of the road that was in our view. At this distance, they were like toy soldiers, small, harmless, and impersonal. Have a good look, Adam. Have a good long look at them. It's a healthy business to regard what you fear. Look at it long and calm, and you will find that it calms you inside. I did as he said, and bit by bit, the panic in me worked out. My heart beat less strongly, and the awful mindless fear of them began to subside. While this was taking place inside me, Solomon Chandler talked on, his tone as chatty and comfortable as if we were sitting in Mother's kitchen, and not out here in the open with the Redcoats only but a half-mile away. Study them, Adam, he said, and realize their stupidity and ignorance. They have a great contempt for us. They call us peasants and louts, but not 1 in 10 of them can read or write his letters. A good half of them are convicts, cutthroats, footpads, serving out their time in His Majesty's colors instead of in jail. The rest of them are poor, ignorant devils with a religion as cloudy and superstitious as their minds. They are a poor substitute for machines. They do what they are told to do, and when there is no one out there to tell them, the life goes out of them. Where are they marching? To Concord, no doubt, having heard that we have put some shot and gunpowder away there. But it will be easy going there and coming back. Each of them carries his Brown Bess, 15 pounds of regulation musket. I would not give you sixpence for. Mind you, they don't even have a back sight on that gun of theirs. It's a handy tool for a bayonet and murderous when they stand up against you as they did on the common. But a single shot will never find you. They don't know how to aim the thing. It kicks like a mule, but the bullet carries only 100 paces. And the pack on their back weighs 40 pounds more, 5 pounds of shot and water, a heavy spun uniform, canvas leggings, and a wig under that fool hat they wear. Oh, yes, indeed. It will be easier going than coming. We won't try to stop them then? Oh, no, Adam, not at all. It was a shame that a terrible thing had to happen at your home. But we won't try to stop them now. Let them march. There are good boys at Concord to move away whatever must be saved. And there will be good boys at the Old North Bridge, too, if they should desire to cross it, all in good time, and we'll be going along now. We marched off again, the old man walking as easily and casually as if there was no redcoat within 20 miles, instead of 1,000 of them a stone's throw away. And I must say it had an effect on me. I could feel my mood changing, where my whole body and every thought had been saturated with grief for my father. Now I could feel the same grief hardening like a knot in my belly. Whatever lay ahead of me, I at least began to sense that I would be able to face it. And the old man seemed to know the change in me. He nodded approvingly and said, "We are an old race of people, Adam, and there is not any fear that can't be faced and dealt with. Make yourself compatible with it, and it shrivels. That's been our way this long time. You might ask yourself, how does old Solomon Chandler know what he knows about the British? Well, I went a soldiering with them all through the French War, and I learned some knowledge of them, believe me. You know what they called me, laddie? They called us damn Yankees. That's a new learning. Then they called us gillies, which is a Scot word for peasant. Hey, you suffering thick-headed gilly, damn you. That was a common form of polite address by their officers, who looked down upon us with contempt. The artful ways they had. There was one of them, a captain of something of a sort, who once asked my opinion on the matter of weather. I answered him, it will be fair weather, Jehovah willing. And then he says back to me, what the devil are you, gillies, Jews or something? With your damn Jew names and your talk of Jehovah this and Jehovah that? And what did you say to that, I wanted to know. Tell you, Adam, I am slow to retort. A man's better for thinking a bit before he says his piece. And I looked at that redcoat man, up and down I looked at him, and then I said this very quiet and gentle to him. It is only by the mercy of the same Lord God Jehovah that I don't cut your throat. He saw what I meant, too. And did he bother you for it, Solomon? Heavens, no. He became a gentleman, like he was born and bred to be. Well, Adam has now found himself a new friend. And we are really doing good, ladies and gentlemen. I think that we will probably finish the book I'm hoping by Friday. Uh, again, a couple really interesting things that um, Howard Fast, I think, puts in the book kind of subtly. We talked about this year um, the one of the advantages that the American armies would have, during the Revolution was that they had home field advantage, right? They knew the terrain. The British Army was a European army that, for the most part, wanted to fight on a big battlefield and line up across from the other side, shoot their cannons, shoot their muskets, and then come in and get them with the bayonet. And he's using this Solomon Chandler, this older man, and he's saying, we got them. Let them march. They're carrying all this stuff. They haven't slept. Let them get tired. When they're on their way back and they're totally exhausted, whap. That's when we're going to hit them. So it's that kind of military strategy and tactics like that are going to help us eventually win the war. We are going to fight the American Revolution like the British. We're going to fight like a European army in a lot of ways, but we're also going to use guerrilla tactics. We're not going to always meet them on an open battlefield. And that'll be one of the advantages that we have during the war. And I think, again, Howard Fast is a smart guy. He's a great writer. He understands the history, and he's splash these things in, which are really cool. All right, so let's talk about what's going on in the world. Let's talk about what's going on in the state. If you guys have any questions, you know what to do. Throw them out there. Type in some comments, and I'll do my best to get to them. So lots of stuff, lots of really interesting things, and some of these things are I don't know. I thought about them and I said, boy, that's a good thing. And then I said, well, wait a minute, maybe you guys are going to think they're not so good. So, I'm just going to jump around a little bit here. First of all, I read today that a minister in Tampa, Florida, was arrested. And this minister was arrested. He runs they called it in the news a mega church. So I guess we could kind of liken this to, if you are familiar with churches maybe that are on the television, right? That have a lot of people, thousands of people, maybe that are attending one type of religious service. Well, this man had a huge church, right? That held not a couple hundred people, but a couple thousand people, and he has refused to stop those services, right? So up here in New York, the governor has said no social distancing. Of course, the president, we must social distance. We cannot come together. And religious services are banned for a while. The bishop in Albany, right, said, hey, even though it's Lent, it's a holy time of the year. He's waiving, coming together. And I guess a lot of churches are starting to do like an online type thing, a streaming type thing. But anyways, so this minister refused. He said, I will not stop holding mass until the end of days. Yikes. And he was arrested by the Tampa sheriff, and he was arrested for unlawful assembly and a violation of the health emergency rules of Florida. So both of these were misdemeanors. They brought him in, they took his mugshot, and he was bailed out. But it seems as though in parts of our country that people are, and the police are certainly carrying this out. I think last night, I'm sorry, let me back up. They're carrying out and following through with these orders that governors are giving. Last night, we talked about the Albany police called the Albany County executive and said, hey, listen, we have got restaurants here that are letting people sit down and eat. Today on Facebook, I saw a number of my friends posting that live in Albany, posting, and I'm not going to bring up the restaurant names, but saying, "Hey, restaurant, what are you doing? I drove by and there's 20 people sitting down eating in your restaurant. What's going on here?" So we'll see where that goes. Um, the A couple days ago, we talked about these four senators that had sold stocks after getting some knowledge about the coronavirus. This was back in January. A lot of them have made a lot of money about it. So the Justice Department has officially launched an investigation into these four senators. So we'll see. Many people, they feel that they have violated what is called the Stock Act of 2012, which is if you are given information, and what it's called is insider information, you cannot use that information to manipulate the stock market or manipulate stock and buy stock that you own. And I think I gave you that example of a friend of mine who a couple nights ago, I gave you that example that a friend of mine who works for a company that I considered buying some stock in, he had told me something about that company, and nope, can't do it. I can't buy it because now I have information that the general public doesn't have. So something really cool I saw today, John Krasinski, who you guys may or may not know as Jim from The Office. He's also the new Jack Ryan in Amazon Prime, which I think they're two pretty good seasons of that show, Jack Ryan. He is making, and I think he's going to keep doing this. I don't think he's going to do it every day. But he did this thing, SGN, and what he is doing is he's kind of scouring social media, and he's calling out for people to, I think it was called the Such Good News, and he's just getting all these cool stories of people coming in and doing all these awesome things. And one of the neat things that I saw was that there are different places around our country where like police officers and firefighters and even like people that live in the area of a hospital or a medical center. I saw that they all these police cars and fire cars pulled up, and they kind of just threw all the sirens on and everything to kind of pay tribute to all the medical workers, all the medical staff that were working in the hospitals. And in one, it might have been in Boston, I think, outside of one of the hospitals there, all the people in all of the homes and the big apartment buildings were flashing their lights, on and off in their apartments to, kind of say, wave and say hi and pay tribute to our medical profession. So John Krasinski, check him out. SGN, Such Good News. I believe that's what it stood for, Such Good News. Some other good stuff. First of all, if you hadn't heard, tomorrow morning, the Mahonison News team is relaunching the news show. So you can go to, I guess it's Mohan TV, YouTube Live, and they're going to be doing the news every single day now. And that starts, again, it starts tomorrow, Tuesday morning. The other thing, this Friday, starting at 11 a.m., the Mahonison Teacher and Staff Car Parade is going to take place in Rotterdam. So teachers and staff members are going to drive around to all the different neighborhoods and wave at the kiddos and say hi to them. Of course, we can't really physically interact, but at least drive around and see everybody and say hi. Some interesting things, there are, maybe some of you guys know about or get these phone calls to your house. A lot of times they come around dinner time, but I really don't know how many people have landlines anymore. But you get this phone call and you pick it up, and somebody, hey, can I ask you some questions about whatever, right? We'll ask you questions about this. We'll ask you questions about that. They're pollsters, excuse me, pollsters, right? They're calling to get your opinion about different topics, and they're the Siena probably about 15 years ago started a research institute. So people that work in not only the political science but the science departments at Siena work together to launch these polls. When you do this, you have to be very careful about the questions you ask. You have to ask questions that don't show a bias, right? So they call people, they ask these people questions. They ask people questions about who they are. What's your age? What's your income? Are you married? Do you have kids? All that kind of good stuff. They're finding out demographic information about you. And then they take that information and then they compare it to people that are similar to you, right? So, they'll say, well, 92% of the men that we polled over the ages of 45 believed in blah, 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 right? So what they did, though, is they did a lot of research about Governor Cuomo and how he is handling this coronavirus situation. And staggeringly, 87% of New Yorkers approve of how Governor Cuomo is handling this. Now you want to believe that when they do a poll, and this is really important stuff, guys. Okay, this is really important stuff. When Siena or any organization conducts a poll, you want to make sure that they're calling a good sample of people, right? If I said, hey, I did a poll, and this poll 98% of the people believe that alcohol should be legal at age 16, right? You're like, whoa, oh my God, think about all those people that think alcohol should, 16-year-olds should be able to drink. Well, what would you want to know, right? You would want to know, well, who the heck did Mr. Martin ask? And if I told you all I did was ask 14 and 15-year-olds, in high school, well, wait a minute, that's not a good group of people. That's not a good sample pool of people that you have to ask from. You have to ask people all over the state. You have to ask poor people. You have to ask rich people. You have to ask people in the middle. You have to ask men. You have to ask women. You have to ask white people. You have to ask minorities, right? You've got to ask a good blend of people. So sometimes it kind of takes a while for that sample to be created, and there's a lot of people that work for these different polling places. But once they feel like they have a good sample, then they can, release the results. And a lot of times they want a sample of individuals that kind of represent the state, right? Maybe they've called a couple thousand people and they want the same ratio in regards to socioeconomic status, the same amount of white people, right? Caucasians, the same amount of minorities, the same amount of men, women in the state. Once it kind of accurately reflects that, then they can say, the poll is legit. That's ideally what they want. But they're saying 87% of New Yorkers are pretty happy with the governor right now. Which, if you went back a few years ago when the SAFE Act was passed, that was not the number. So the USNS Comfort, which is a massive boat, right? It looks like a cruise liner, and it's a part of the United States Navy. It landed in New York Harbor today. It is a 1,000-bed floating hospital. There are blood laboratories. There are 12 operating rooms. There are 2 oxygen creation or oxygen, not creation, 2 big plants, these 2 big machines on the boat that produce oxygen production machines. I don't know what they're technically called. So, they're worried about ventilators. They're worried about people with the virus that need these ventilators. And this ship can take care of about 1,000 people. So So the last time the USNS Comfort was in New York City, it was deployed there after 9/11. So thank you to the federal government. Thank you to the Navy for sending it to us. What else do we have today? Oh, all right. So when it comes to what's happening with the stimulus, right? They're saying that it could be just about 3 weeks when people start getting these stimulus checks. And I saw this really interesting discussion today on, it was a live chat with different senators and members of Congress talking about the last 3 times that the government, the big times that the government had to come in and do some bailouts and kind of stimulate the economy. And what, why do we study history? We study history so that we can learn from our mistakes, right? That's part of what we want to do. And it seems like members of Congress want to do that. And one of the members of Congress was talking about right after 9/11, right? Flying on a plane, jumping on a plane is not exactly what a lot of people want to do. So a lot of American airlines were in trouble, and the federal government bailed out, right? They gave these airlines huge chunks of money. They gave them loans so that they could stay in business, and the airlines would not lay off all their employees. Well, what happened after 9/11 and this big government bailout was a lot of people, a lot of these airlines, what they ended up doing is they used this financial climate that had happened after 9/11, and basically they busted and they got rid of all the unions in the airlines. They said, hey, listen, things are bad. If you want us to bail you out, if you want us to be able to keep you and your jobs, we need you to get rid of these unions. And what happened was a lot of these airlines, to stay afloat, they ended up cutting the pension of all their workers. So at the same time, these airlines are given money by the government to stay afloat, and they cut all their workers' pensions. They get rid of the unions, those bargaining units that people are using for better wages, for better working conditions, all that kind of stuff. And what they do is they end up giving a lot of their executives bonuses, right? When things start going better, the execs get bonuses. So, we kind of don't want that to happen again. But in 2008, when the housing that with the subprime mortgage crisis, and 3.1 million homes are foreclosed upon across the country, that's 3.1 million families that have lost their homes. The government did the same thing. President Bush and Congress acted to bail out mortgage companies, to bail out insurance companies. At the same time, the auto industry was starting to fail, and the big auto companies were getting bailouts. And again, similar things happened. The government borrowed, $1.5 trillion, handed it to these businesses. And I remember specifically one company, gave out something like $280 million in bonuses. They laid off all these people, and they said, oh, we're going to go under. We're going to go under. You need to save us. We need to save our employees. And they got the money from the government, but then they ended up cutting a lot of jobs, and then they ended up dishing out millions and millions of dollars, to all their top executives. So the business is failing, the business is falling apart, but the government gives us money. Well, we're going to hand out all these bonuses. So whether that's right or not, I'll leave it up to you. So, here we are with another big stimulus package that's going to go out to small businesses, right? The big aim is we want to put hands into the, or we want, excuse me, we want to put money into the hands of American workers. We've talked about $1,200 per person if you're making under 75,000. Families, and if you have children, you're going to get a little bit more money on top of that, right? But the other big part of this is a lot of money is also being put in to expand unemployment, right? Because what's going to happen? Why is it tough to repair the economy, right? Well, a lot of the economy, is really based on confidence. And, or I should say, a lot of what goes on in the economy is based on confidence. And, if you consider yourself like, let's say you owned a pizza shop in Rotterdam, right? And you no longer, you've got, I don't know, 20 tables in your restaurant. And, Monday night's a little slow, Tuesdays night's a lot of slow, but you have good takeout. As you go on in the week, you get more people in, and that's really when you're making your big money, right? Is on Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, the place is packed. But now you don't have that. Right now, you've got employees to pay, but you don't have anybody coming into your restaurant. Maybe you still have the takeout business going, but times are you're hurting, right? You're hurting. So when the economy starts to pick up again, you're going to say to yourself, well, wait a minute. I laid off half my staff. Things are jumping again, but am I going to hire them all back at once? Let me hire two back this week. And maybe things are busy. I'll see how next week looks, right? Well, next week is pretty good. Maybe a little busy again, right? All right. Maybe I'll hire one back, and so it takes time to rebuild. It takes time to build that confidence back up. The analogy that I use sometimes is like when you talk about rebuilding the economy, when you have like a really good, really close friend, and you get into that fight, and they betray your trust, and then you're like, get out of my face, I don't want to ever talk to you. And you're I don't know, tweeting about them, or texting them, and hey, you scumbag, blah blah blah, I hope you get Mr. Martin next year as a teacher, and your life will suck, and all that kind of those bad texts that you guys are always sending each other. But then one day you're back together, you're friends again, right? So you're friends, but it's always kind of in the back of your mind, right? You're always kind of like, wait a minute, this happened not that long ago, and I'm a little worried it might happen again, right? So it just takes time to really build up that trust. And again, I think one of the reasons they're really going to expand and push out unemployment is because they're really worried that even once the virus is gone, even once things start to really smooth out, it's going to take time for businesses to really say, okay, let me bring everybody back in. And I think you'll see that a lot in, maybe some of the seasonal businesses around Rotterdam, like Curry Freeze and the Big Scoop and places like that. They may, when they really start to open, they may not have a big staff at first. They may kind of start things out slow. And some of these businesses that have shut down, or I shouldn't say shut down, a lot of businesses that have really kind of cut back their staff. I think you're just going to see it build up slowly. So the government wants to be able to extend out unemployment for people. So I wanted to, talk a little bit about unemployment, because I feel like unemployment is one of those things that is really misunderstood, right? I hear this a lot. Well, all those deadbeats are just on unemployment, and they're living their life for years, and they're never doing any work, and this. And well, hold on here. Let's time out. First of all, when you work, right, you work a job. Part of your paycheck, right, goes to taxes, and those taxes, the government will take the taxes, and they are going to provide services. And one of the things that our country has mandated for almost 90 years now is this unemployment insurance. And in I believe on your check, it should say SUI, state unemployment insurance. So, when you own a car, right, you need to have car insurance. Why do you have car insurance? Well, you have car insurance so that if you get into an accident, there is a way for you to be able to repair the car or buy a new car, right? And repair the person's car that you got in an accident with, right? That's why we have insurance. You pay in knowing that one day you may have to take out. Well, that's what unemployment insurance is. So first of all, when you collect unemployment, you've paid into that, right? You've been paying into it. I am 47 years young. I have been working since I was 16 years old. I've never collected unemployment in my life. And if I had collected unemployment, I would have no problem telling you that I did. I've been paying in for 31 years. I've never had to take any out, but I'm sure glad it's there, right? So unemployment is not just something that, the government just starts waving and giving to people, even if they haven't worked, right? So people that get unemployment have paid in, just like someone that gets a check from Progressive when they crash their car. Well, they've been paying those insurance premiums, so they're going to get that check to repair their car. Now, in New York State, here's what I found. Unemployment is a federal and state program, okay? And the federal government kind of watches over how it's how should I put this? The federal government kind of watches, excuse me, and makes sure that the states are providing unemployment, but each state gets to kind of they get to set the regulations. So in regards to when do you actually start qualifying for unemployment? If I worked at I don't know, the curry freeze for 3 weeks and then got fired. Or they said not get fired because you can't get unemployment if you get fired, right? But they say, hey, listen, sorry, Mr. Martin, we got to cut you. We got to cut you. I can't go and collect unemployment then. I've only worked for 3 weeks, right? So in New York State, here's what you have to have done. You had to have worked at least 420 to 700 hours in 2 quarters, so meaning over a 6-month period of a year. During that time, you would have had to have at least earned $2,600 during each one of those quarters to even start qualifying. So if you're working a part-time job and you're not making a ton of money, you can't go and you're not going to qualify for unemployment. And here's to put it into perspective. Let's say that you were working and you made $10,000 each quarter. So that means you were working a job which is going to pay you $40,000 a year. Your earnings would be $384 a week when it came to your unemployment compensation. So, I'm a dad with 2 kids, and I'll tell you right now, guys, $384 isn't going to get you very far. It's going to be able to stop the bleeding, but it's not going to get you. I think that there's a lot of people out there who think that people on unemployment are like sitting back and they're ordering pay-per-view and they're eating lobster every night. You can't live that lifestyle on $384 a week. So the more money you make, the more money you're going to get in unemployment. But the top payout is only I shouldn't say only, but it's $504 a week. So again, as a father of 2 children, I can tell you that, that just doesn't get you very far, right? I have two teenage sons, and bringing in $504 a week for 200 or 2016 dollars a month, that ain't a lot. And on top of it, my friends, when you collect unemployment, it is taxed. So you're not even going to get all that money. So unemployment is, a thing that I hear a lot of people bashing. But, I don't think you'd go out and bash somebody that, got their check from Flow, from Progressive, and fixed their car, right? That's why insurance is there. For you to be able, if something happens, hard times happen, you're able to rely on this. Now, there's a little bit of discussion. I think it's, and I don't remember, but I think people are going to be able to collect for 4 months, if I remember correctly. I'll try to dig up some more research on that. So 4 months at this rate. Now, these people that are collecting unemployment they will also get one of those checks, right? They'll get one of the stimulus checks. So, again, I know to teenagers, a couple $1,000s might seem like a lot of money to you at your age. And I'm not saying it's not a lot of money. If anybody wanted to give me a couple grand, I'd take it. But it's not gonna get you very far. Not when you have a family, right? It's just not going to get you very far. So, and I'm not saying unemployment is, the best thing. I'm not saying unemployment, people don't abuse it, because certainly people do. In New York State, while you collect unemployment, you are supposed to be looking for a job, right? They check up with you and make sure that you are out there and you are applying for different jobs. And you're trying to get off it, right? You're trying to get off of that. Well, like I said, anywhere up to $504 a week is what you can collect. So unemployment right now is really starting to take off, and some economists are saying that it could hit maybe 20%. During the subprime mortgage crisis, the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, I believe we topped 11%. I want to say it got up to like 11.5% or around there. And that was bad. That was bad. And I don't think I'll ever forget this statistic. In the capital region where we live, for every 5 people that needed a job, there was only one job available. So if you think about the amount of people that are laid off at that time, the amount of people collecting unemployment, and at that time, Congress, and this is one of the first things that President Obama did when he came into office, is they extended unemployment. You could collect unemployment for 99 weeks. So think about it. This is how bad things were in 2008. For almost 2 years, you could collect unemployment as long as you had a job, as long as you had met the minimum, requirements in regards to how much money you have made prior to going on unemployment. But you could stay on it for almost 2 years. So that's a long time, right? That's a real long time to stay on unemployment. And a lot of people did it. And a lot of people were out there trying to find jobs. But only one job in the Capital District was available for 5 people that needed it. So there were a lot of jobs that started to, and this was a time when a lot of young people were not doing so well in the economy, because, again, let's pretend that you're a business person. We are programmed consumers, right? We are, from a very young age, programmed to consume goods and services. So we have a very difficult time thinking like a business. But pretend that you're a business. Pretend that you're perfect. Here we go, architect firm, and you've got to lay some people off, or you're going to lay the young guy off, that's making whatever, money, but maybe you've got an older guy and you're paying him a little bit more. And at that time in 2008, what a lot of businesses started to, I'm having trouble hearing you. Siri, that was funny. What a lot of jobs started to do was say, hey, listen, we got to lay off people, but let's keep the old dude. Let's keep the old lady because they're more experienced. Yes, we are paying them more, but we know we're going to get productivity out of them. They're going to be more productive employees. So, this time around, and I read this on the news this morning, is that, this summer it may be real tough for younger people to get jobs, because employers are going to, go to people that they know are older and maybe more reliable. And the jobs that traditionally, teenagers start to grab are not going to be as available. So we'll see. Hey, if you guys have any questions, throw them out there. I'm going to wrap it up in a couple minutes. What else did I want to? I think there was one other thing I wanted to chat with you guys about tonight. Maybe not. Maybe I did hit it all. Yeah, I think I probably did. Well, another night. We all know. I know we talked about this a little bit last night. The suggested quarantine has now been pushed back to April 30th. So when it comes to when are we going to be back together, when are we going to be back in school? Well, it looks like it's going to be a ways out. It looks like it's going to be at least another month. Right? Today is. Hey, Sydney. I'll address that in 1 second. So it looks like it's going to be maybe another month, but the governor has closed all schools until April 15th. So I suspect that it's probably going to be right after Easter. I think Easter is the 12th, 13th. Yeah, I think Easter is the 12th. So probably the day, I'd be willing to bet the day after Easter, the 13th, he will probably make a press conference on that day. During his press conference on that day, he'll probably make an announcement. So, Sydney, you're asking, do teachers get paid during this time? And the answer is yes. And we can talk, why do teachers get paid? And not only are teachers getting paid, but custodians are getting paid, computer tech guys at the school, our secretarial staff, our administrative assistants, everybody in district office, everybody across the school district is being paid. And we're being paid for a couple reasons. First of all, everyone is still working. And, I have talked to a lot of people. I've texted my friends. I've talked to a lot of teachers. I do every single day. We want to be back at work, right? We don't want to be sitting here in front of the computer. We don't want to be teaching this way. And I'll be honest with you, Sydney, and everybody else that's watching. I do more work now, and I sit in front of this computer now, without a doubt. Like yesterday, Sunday, I think I did about 6.5 hours in front of the computer getting things ready for the week. Right. Today I take a little bit of a part of the day off. But I was, a good solid 3.5, 4 hours. And then, tomorrow it's going to be all day back at it again. Right. So, we are still working, but, last unit, we talked about unions, right. And we talked about, that ginger ale. Unions work together to, fight for better working conditions. They work and they collectively bargain to negotiate, and a lot of times, contracts, right? So teachers have a contract. Teachers are part of a bargaining unit. The teaching assistants are part of a bargaining unit. Um, the tech guys, the IT guys, the secretaries, they are all part of a bargaining unit and they have a contract. Teachers have a contract that go from September, usually it's about September 1st. Sometimes we have to come back like a little early, all the way until the end of June, right? That's our contract. And during that time, we are required to do these things. Well, during this time, even though we're not in school, we are still teaching. We are still, pushing out new content. We are still doing different things. We're not doing it in the traditional way. So, because of that contract, we will continue to get paid. Just like the computer tech guys, the tech guys, and I'll tell you, their jobs right now are crazy on campus, right? They are in and out. They are doing work from home. Like the computer guys are signing on from home and they're fixing computers and helping people with their Chromebooks and all these different things remotely from home. So they're still working too, and they will continue to get paid. Um, yes, it's a good question, and a lot of there are a lot of businesses that are doing every single thing they can to continue to pay their employees. And I can't remember. I want to say, oh geez, I don't remember what company, but there's an American company where the CEO, the guy makes like who knows 30 million a year or something like that, has now taken a drastic pay cut because he wants to keep every single worker working for him being paid full time during this. So again, there's a lot of awesome stuff like that happening. Kudos, right? Kudos to the businesses that are doing that stuff. So, right, Sydney. Okay, well, you know what, Sydney? The thing is, I guess with that is that's a part-time job, and that is a job that is dependent upon a service that is being provided by the school. So uh, the school is not giving swimming lessons, and I don't know if you're giving lessons or if it's just managing the pool on weekends or something like that when the little kiddies come in and well, big kiddies come in too and use the pool. But that is again that's do you have are you in a union? Do you have a contract? No, right? That's a job that is a part-time job that's really paid based on need. And right now there is no need for the pool to be open and for a lifeguard. So um, I'm sorry that you're not being paid. I'm very sorry. Hopefully we'll get back and you can work and get paid because I'm sure that'd be a great thing. I'm sure a lot of kids they'd love the opportunity to go swimming right now to get out of their house and um, just do anything, right? Get moving and not be trapped. I've seen a lot of really cool things. A lot of people are doing some really cool stuff. A friend of mine, he and his family did this like Olympic thing. They made little gold, first, second, third place gold, silver, bronze medals, and then they played like Wii and bowling in the house and all these different. They had like a Scrabble tournament, and then they kept posting on Facebook throughout the day the medal count and all that kind of stuff, and that was pretty cool. So a lot of people are I think doing some really neat stuff to help pass the time. But again, guys, as I sign off here, remember that this is a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. It's going to take time. Remember every day to exercise your mind and exercise your body, even it's a little bit of something, right? Um, Today we read together and that was awesome. maybe, if you don't want to read anymore, just read a magazine, or do a little bit, do like a craft or something like that, and just get your mind and keep your mind working. And if you can't, you don't have like today, it was kind of a crappy day and the rain and stuff. I did my best. I didn't want to get up early, but I got up early and I tried to beat the rain, and I got out there, and just as I was getting back, to the house, it started to rain. So, but I got a nice 3 mile walk in this morning. So try to get outside if you can a little bit, but keep your social distancing. And, I'll be back tomorrow night. Remember that, I miss you guys, and I want to be back in the classroom with you. I hope everybody's doing well. And, I'm excited. We're really getting into some great stuff in the book. Um, we've only got about 70 pages left. So I definitely think by Friday we'll be done. And next Sunday we'll start another book. So good night, guys. Miss you, and talk to you soon. Be safe, be healthy.